And so
Right.
this conversation is with Miss Arnelle Williams. And you were talking about, this whole thing about mental health. I've heard through reporting teachers saying, we need more support systems for mental health in
Right.
our educational system. Can you
Absolutely.
talk a little bit about what that means for you and a little bit about how you kind of cope with that?
Okay, so first and foremost, hi everybody. My name is Arnelle Williams. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And through Teach for America, I found myself in the Mississippi Delta, Clarksdale to be exact. And I finished teaching middle school for 3 years. 3 years, y'all. Middle school kids. Like, I feel like I need to get a little award for that. But I mean, so that mental health in itself, right? Middle school equals mental health in a sense where it's just so much you have to deal with. Like, you're dealing with students who are becoming teenagers, kids who are finding about themselves, their bodies is forming in a different way. Even though I must say, down south, I don't know what's in the water, but y'all be coming up quick, very voluptuous. I mean, but it's okay. My kids look,
That's that cornbread fed right there.
Gotta be the cornbread. Gotta be the cornbread. Collard greens, everything. The pork chops too. But so I think I've seen teachers who literally, came in one way mentally, and throughout the year, you could just see their whole demeanor switch, or just taking more than the allotted sick days or personal days just because of that strain. Your brain is doing a million different things when you're in the classroom, just the classroom, but when you're outside of the classroom in the hallways, you're still engaging, like after school hours. Okay, so what am I doing next based on today's lesson? Did it go well? Did it not go well? Which parents you got to call after school? Which parents you need to contact. You're also dealing with co-teaching with your coworkers, trying to plan for the following week. So it's just a constant. Your brain is just constantly firing, and you don't get that time to just breathe and break. And so I think this time, mental health for me, while I was an educator, really meant like a lot of prayer. So if you have a faith base, like I had to spend time praying, talking to God, be like, God, is this really for me? Like, are you sure you want me here? Because it's very difficult. And also just reminding like my gifts, like each person is gifted, each person is talented. So if you remember your why is it that you want to go ahead and teach in the first place? Why is it that you're even here trying this whole thing out? You cannot forget your why. And I think you got to keep that in perspective. My support system here, like meeting other young people here. Oh my goodness. And just other teachers who wanted to see me well, but also at the same time, constant communication with other teachers, and also like people who just not even a teacher, to just kind of live in this environment, get used to this environment. I'm blessed, to have made it through when I know halfway through the school year, teachers dropping like flies. So
Yeah, and we'll get into a little bit of that, but you mentioned the why. Like, if you're going to be an educator, you need to cling on to that why you're doing this. Before we get into your why, can you give us a little bit more about you? You're from Brooklyn and you're in the Delta. How did you got here by way of TFA, but how did you hear about it? What made you decide? Like, have you always wanted to be a teacher?
Just kind of
talk.
Okay, so let me give a background about me. So I was definitely one of those kids where just love school, respect the school, but I was like, that job, not for me. Like, I see, kids don't really respect the teacher enough. And so I just thought it was such a task, a grueling task, that wasn't just for me. How did I get myself involved? I mean, when I was in college, a senior year, I really had no clue what is it I wanted to do like next. I had no idea, but it wasn't until like recruiters came to our campus. So I'm a proud graduate of Wesleyan University, so shout out to anybody who's from Wesleyan. It's a small liberal arts school in Middletown, Connecticut. And so basically I had recruiters come to campus and say, if you're interested in social justice, like, do you want to serve in communities where, kids are not having a teacher? Like, that thought to me was crazy. What do you mean, like, kids don't actually have a teacher? Because I grew up in school systems where teachers were always present. So to have, the whole school year not have a biology teacher or English teacher, that was mind-blowing to me. So it talks to my own privilege. And then I just kept, I was okay, let me just go to this info session. This lady keeps on emailing me all the time about like trying to get recruiters to teach for America. And then also there were some kids at my school who actually, were seniors who at the time when I was a freshman. And so I heard about it. They always assumed that it was like this prestigious thing. It was very competitive, very hard to get into. And I'm a competitive soul. So like, all right, I'll check it out, see what's up. But it really got me when every single person who did teach for America kind of had the same type of drive. They were all enthusiastic about teaching, about serving, and not really teaching, but just about serving others that were different from themselves, right? And just being placed on an adventure type of environment where you, for the most part, is on your skills, is on like what you bring to the table, right? No one's really handing you a set booklet on how to do it, but
yeah.
So I just said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try it out. Got accepted, so I knew what I was doing since January. Like I kind of knew, I graduated in May, but I kind of knew what I was doing since January. But I wasn't mentally prepared about my placement in Mississippi. But that's just like, how I got here. But in terms of my family unit, like I'm Caribbean, West Indian, so any people who like from Jamaica, Haiti, Guyana. So Guyana is where my family's from. And so growing up in my household, like that kind of immigrant tale where like my grandma came over first and she was heavy on education. So my mom is also heavy on education. She wanted us to go to the best schools in New York. I'm also a triplet, so there's 3 people that look like me. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I wish there were 3 people that look like me, but no. So I'm a triplet, right? So I have a brother and a sister who I love dearly. And so the 3 of us kind of grew up with this sense of like, you're going to college. Like that's no question about it. You're also going to do well in school. And with that, like all 3 of us kind of competing with each other to kind of do well in school, that pushed us even to look at, colleges and go to school. But also growing up too in Brooklyn, it was kind of like this where I had this group of friends. I would say we were all the same age and we kind of did everything together. So you already had like how do I say this? A gang, if you will, who was kind of doing everything that you wanted to kind of do in life. So you had people who were interested in playing sports, dancing, and they were all in school. So we kind of helped each other to stay grounded and wanting to just be the very best versions of ourselves. And it's not the same everywhere in Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn is huge, about like 3 million people that live in Brooklyn. But I would say the way I grew up in Brooklyn on my one-way street, that kind of was unique to us, where it was a whole bunch of kids. We all kind of were doing the same things, and we all went to school. So it was a lot of fun. We had some great times. But so does that answer your question more about me?
Yeah. Do you think that upbringing, and that grounding that y'all have kind of gave you a little bit of a foundation for being a teacher?
Absolutely. I feel like my mom she's an accountant and she's a senior billing for a big electric company. And I feel like that's her 9 to 5. But her real job is teaching. Like my mom always would give us these, I'm so serious. She would give us these little tidbits of life lessons on like what to do and what not to do. And through the way she sat down and talked to us, kind of really set that foundation of like, how do you teach to a different age group that's not your age group, right? How do you relay messages to just a younger generation? And I think that structure in the household, doing your homework, you had to be involved in something. Like every summer, we were doing something. Every summer, there was some type of academic program that we were involved in. You couldn't take off in the summertime. So I think the way she communicates to other people, the way that my mother and my father too, to an extent, the way that both of them kind of communicated to us made me think now, okay, so in this teacher role, I feel like I'm a teacher, but I'm also a parent. And at the same time, like, me being a parent, being able to teach middle school kids, that was by far, I would say, some of the life lessons that my mom told me kind of trickled down into my teaching skills.
Yeah. Oh. So now that brings me to something you said earlier, that you weren't prepared to come to Mississippi. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between, you know, where you're from and coming to the Delta and some of the culture shock that you
Oh my
experienced?
goodness, y'all. There's a place called Clarksville, Mississippi.
That I'm born and raised.
There's a place, it's on the map. I'm telling you, it exists. Look it up. Wow. So, I mean, okay, so full disclaimer, I never actually taught in New York, okay, guys? So my first teaching job is here. So basically, when I grew up in the school system in New York, I mean, you're talking about millions of kids. Like, you could tell when the kids are out. Like, when 3 o'clock hit, you want to avoid that. So just that nature of, like, so many different schools, like, you're initially placed by your zone school by where you live, and so you're being interacted with so many different kids, so many different cultures. Like, New York is very diverse. I mean, I was mixing with different people growing up, you know, experiencing different things. So culture wise, when we talk about culture shock, you know, I was used to diversity. I would say I was used to diversity. I was used to people traveling on trains and buses to get to school. I was used to, you know, almost 30 kids in the classroom. My last name is a W. So when it comes to like sitting in, you know, there was no organized seating. So like I sat in the back of every single class, and that teacher just, you know, taught in a very straightforward format. I think I didn't have that much technology. I think the Promethean board just got to, like, you know, my middle school experience, and I was like, ooh. But for the most part, you know, it was a little projector, and it came on the wall, and you just took notes. And I also went to school where it was over 1,000 kids. So,
oh wow,
yeah, over
large
1,000
school.
kids. It was a large school. And so, I mean, the hallways were crowded. We had different lunch periods, different schedules, 3 floors. I mean, 3 floors. Yes, 3 floors.
We didn't even have stairs at our school.
Wow. So, so we had 3 floors, y'all. And so that kind of environment, just, you know, being, you know, large and big and fast paced, that's kind of what I was used to. Now, when I stepped foot on that hot July, in Clarksdale, you know, just the accents, first of all, like everyone sounded so country to me. The friendliness, I mean, people here was very like open and welcoming, so very super friendly. Delta State was kind of where we first did our, you know, training. And then in my first week, usually we start school in September. So to start school in August, to me, I was like, wait a second, no, we still on summer vacation. So we start school earlier here, which, you know, I appreciate in a sense. And then now my first week, I would say, of actually being in the classroom and getting used to these kids, it was a shock in the sense that I just didn't know the language, right? I didn't know the way of life in the sense of how, like, and I got to use it. I'm like, what do you mean you have to use it? So just certain different phrases that are very unique to Clarksville, very unique to Delta. Understanding that, you know, poverty, right? In a sense of seeing towns that I feel like used to be booming at one point in our history kind of, you know, look a little bit rustic, got that rustic old feel to it. The history down here, I feel like I definitely tuned out to New York history, but while I'm here in the South, I feel almost closer to whatever roots, like the diaspora that's kind of here, because it has that vibe, it has that feeling down South where you feel like, oh yeah, that was one of my one of my ancestors who worked on the fields right here, the cotton fields was right here. And I think everybody should take a trip to the South being here, just because you need to see a lot of foundations, I think, of American history started down here, right? And being in Clarksdale with the blues and a lot of different civil rights movements that were literally here. Faneuil Hammer, I mean, it just is crazy. So I think I was shocked in a sense of how much I would enjoy just the feel of being in a small town. I thought to myself that I actually wanted to be placed in Jackson, right? I was like, wait a second, you know, city to city, please don't place me in the Delta. But then I changed my mind last minute because there was something unique about this place where I felt a little bit of hominess. And if I'm going to be here for like 3 years, yeah, I want to feel like I'm at home. Yeah. And, but there's more shock to it. Like, the more I started teaching, I mean, we can get into it in terms of learning different types of kids. I mean, I feel like growing up, everyone learned the same. There was no such thing as like the ADHD kid who just couldn't sit down. Like, everybody literally in my classroom sat down. Nobody walked out outside of the classroom when they threw, when they were upset at the teacher. Nobody cursed at the teacher. Nobody said, I'm going to call my mama on you. Like, it just wasn't that type of, I would say, experience. And so I was shocked to learn that many of the kids, and not all of them, right? There was some, I had a lot of students who I loved, but it was just a lot of understanding this age group, but not this age group for everybody, just specific to Clarksdale. And that takes some time to get used to. It takes some time to get to learn the whole language. So, but yeah.
How did that shape your teaching experience? Because we talked a little bit about, perception and, some of the challenges that this area faced versus, what you grew up accustomed to. How did, like, taking in that rich culture, the different type of students, the different type of ways that students learn, how did all of that shape your teaching? Because you're coming out of college, a first time teacher.
Right, exactly. Like, so basically for me, I had to recognize that, you know, graduating from college, I think my mindset was in the clouds in a sense. Like, I didn't do my homework enough to really fully understand what I was getting myself into. I feel like because I excelled so much in college, it should have, things would have just, come naturally, right? Like, okay, I was president of this club, I figured it out, good. So then teaching should just be like another kind of gig. And I think it was just shocking to me when I realized, like, kids would just not stop. Like, if I said stop talking, they're continuing to talk. And I'm like, but didn't you hear me? I said stop talking. So I hadn't realized there was more to it, that you have to set, procedures. You have to establish some type of relationship with your kids, right? You can't just come in all hot-headed and think you know everything, because kids will tell you real quick, they'll put you in place real quick. So I think being more humbled coming in from college, and I'll just say that because, college kind of amps you up, right? It says you are amazing, you're great at what you do, now go conquer the world. So you try to go conquer the world, and it's like, wait a second, let me be humbled for a sec. Let me, like, bring it down a couple notches. So my kids, taught me so much about their family dynamics. They taught me so much about how they're the first ones to, they want to be the first ones to go to college. They want to be the first ones to graduate and finish high school. They don't want to have a baby early. And that's not to say if you did, like, there's no issues with that, but they just see so much of social issues around them, but they kind of want to make themselves different or set apart. And I think establishing that relationship with my kids from day one, like, was key. Absolutely. Letting them know that, okay, yes, I'm this outsider, right? Like, I'm not from here. Like, why would I leave New York to come teach here? That's a good question. And I told them, because I want to do this job. I want to teach. I want to learn from different people. And I don't just see you as some, age group from out of nowhere, but I see you as, first and foremost, your Blackness for what it is. No matter where you are, I'm definitely for elevating and empowering young kids who look like me. So if that means I need to be thousands of miles away from home, then yeah, I'm gonna go do that job. And so I think learning that my job wasn't to necessarily tell them, like, you need to know every single thing in the book when it comes to education, but it was more to empower them to love themselves and to want to love learning. And I think many kids think learning as a chore. And I